Complete and utter domination by the Green Bay Packers tonight, winning 34-0 over the New Orleans Saints. This game was never close. It was never competitive. Even from the outset, you knew the Packers were just a better team. And yes, the Saints are injured all the way up and down the roster. But even if this Saints team is fully healthy, Packers are still beating them by a lot. It's just that simple. The Packers are just a better team. There's no shame in that. It's just that the Saints are in dire need of a rebuild, but their GM and owner will not allow that. So the Saints are going to be middling probably for the next 5 or 7 years before they actually have any chance of climbing out of it. And that's just the way Saints fan like me is just going to have to deal with. So, but the Packers in the meantime are playoff bound. Sadly, they cannot win the division. But, they're going to be playing week 1 of the wildcard playoffs. And as long as things continue the way they are in the standings, they will be playing at Philadelphia week 1 with a chance to revenge the game from week 1. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. And let's break this down. It might be a little shorter than usual because there's just not a lot to say. From the get-go, Josh Jacobs running the ball, Packers getting a little creative, doing some pitches and reverses to Jaden Reed. They really couldn't be stopped. One of the things that really annoyed me about the Packers game is that Jordan Love had a decent game for the most part, but there were several times where he underthrew targets, overthrew targets, and just was off target in general. Now, again, it didn't matter. He didn't have any interceptions or anything, had the one touchdown, and was pretty accurate overall. But again, like I said, there's a couple missed receivers in the flat, a couple overthrows or underthrows to wide open running backs in the flat is just unacceptable. Chris Brooks, backup running back, had a pretty decent game in recovery from Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs seemingly went down with an injury, but after all, it sounds like he's not too bad in that it was really 21-0. And yes, he went down a little awkwardly, but the Packers had the game in the bag. There's no need to get him injured, and let's just run out the backup running backs because Wilson and Brooks can both carry the lineup, and they sure enough did. Josh Jacobs was the man again today. Again, really couldn't really be stopped. He's just a bull whenever he goes through, which is really nice. And he's just hard to stop. And he had some really nice plays in the passing game as well. And he was just overall good. He had a good game. And again, Josh Jacobs shows why. When good players trapped on a bad team, they can play well, but they can't elevate fully. But now put Josh Jacobs on a team like the Packers, he looks so much better than he already does. He was an all-pro type running back with the Raiders, and he comes to the Packers and immediately has an immediate impact. On defense, Adrian Cooper, again, fantastic. He's been fantastic ever since he came back from injury. Probably not going to win Defensive Player of the Year again in the NFC, but, he had a pretty good game, had a couple knockdowns, had a couple of tackles for losses. He was in on just about everything. Packers caused an interception. They sacked Spencer Rattler 3 times. And, yeah, it was just overall domination. Just utter domination. Dontavian Wicks had a nice, easy touchdown. I mean, he does drop a lot of balls, but, when you need him, and he's like 2 or 3 yards out from the goal line, just throw it to him, and he catches it. Let's talk about the Saints a little bit. Spencer Rattler, I mean, even if you're, like I said, even if you're a fully healthy Saints team and Spencer Rattler's out there, he's not the answer. He's just not. I mean, he's better than Ian Book, that's for sure. He's better than Jay Kaner, that's for sure, but it's not saying much. So, likely not going into next year, Derek Carr will still be starting quarterback because, again, you kind of have to. I mean, you're not just going to cut him and take that huge cap hit on when you're already in cap hell as it is. So, but if you're the Saints and you can find some way to get one of those quarterbacks in the middle of the first round or maybe trade up, I think you need to do it. You need to get a good quarterback. You need to get a quarterback in the first or second round that has some real ability, and enough of this trying to bring guys from the lower rounds like Garrett Gilbert, Ian Book, and Spencer Rattler for one. Yeah, Spencer Rattler had a decent year in college, but again, he's not the answer. Again, Kendre Miller had a couple of nice runs, but not enough. Saints had a bunch of procedural penalties that really bogged down drives, and they just really couldn't get going. Got tackled for losses, got sacked a couple times. Spencer Rattler was, and again, it was really just not competitive at all. It was never once this game was. Did you think the Saints were gonna win, or even challenge the Packers to win? There just was never any chance. There was never a time where the Saints were going to win this game. And it just bears on the chest. The Packers just beat them in just about every category. Now, the Packers defense at times did kind of get beat on really bad plays, but towards the end of the game, I mean, Spencer Rattler was just throwing it all over the field and bobble, overthrow, underthrow. Every time he had several guys wide open late in the game. They could have at the very least broken that shutout, but no. Every time he threw it, it was underthrown, it was bobbled, it was fallout. Definitely could have gotten points when Kalen Saunders had a potential interception, but his teammate kind of jostled the ball out of his hands and he lost it. And that was really the only real threat where the Saints really could have gotten points, because Blake Grupe they were never going to bring him out at any point during the game. I mean, early on, it was down 14. I think it was down 7-0, and the Saints go for it on fourth down. And it's like, I mean, even at that, the fact that the Saints were going on fourth down with their first offensive possession of the game is not a good sign. They knew they were going to lose. And at the end of the second quarter, the bobbling of the time is just awful. That's just what happens to bad teams. Not enough bad things can go on. Not only that, they lost Eric McCoy for probably the rest of the year, and he's had an all-pro type season for a league where offensive line don't get talked about. It was said in the broadcast, Eric McCoy certainly has had a pretty darn good year for the Saints, and it's sad to see him probably be done for the year. Getting back to the Packers again, running game, solid. Receiving game, solid for the most part. Jordan Love definitely still has some things to work on. At times, the Packers just kind of, again, like always, they always kind of take the foot off the gas just a little bit. Now, again, the Saints were really no threat to ever score, so it's not as big of a deal. But come the playoff time when you're playing like the Lions, the Buccaneers, the Eagles, teams like that, you can't let up. You can never let up. You just got to go through. And I like to see that at the end where Malik Willis comes in for Jordan Love, and they still try and score. He had a beautiful throw at the end of the game today. Again, showing what good players can do when they're actually on good teams. I mean, look what Malik Willis did in Tennessee. He was bogged down by just a horrible management system. No development whatsoever. No good coaches to really develop him. Mike Vrabel, good coach, but a defensive coach. He never was going to help Malik Willis get to the point where he needed a nice offensive coach like a Matt LaFleur type to really get to where he needs to be. Now, Malik Willis had a pretty decent drive today. I mean, didn't have to do much, but had a really nice throw. And you can say the Packers ran it up, but it was the kind of score the Packers needed. The Packers needed to be able to continue to score 30-point games. They've been doing it like the last 4 games. They scored over 30 points. And yes, they beat up a helpless team in the Saints, but in the NFL, you just gotta win. Gotta play for the win, baby. And never apologize for who you play. I know a lot of people out there are gonna say, "Oh, the Packers are frauds. They haven't played anybody." But it's like, you cannot apologize for a win. You take the win wherever you can get. You can never have enough wins, and it doesn't matter the nature of the win. A win is a win, and that's all that matters. Now, like I said, the Packers are now in the playoffs. Probably As long as they win one more game and maybe Washington loses, they wrap up that sixth seed, and we'll see. Maybe we'll see if they can move up again. I mean, probably not be. Um, maybe they can move up one, but unlikely unless the Vikings end up losing their last two games, which is possible. And yes, we will be doing that Packer preview game later in the week, so look out for that. I do think this Packers team can beat the Vikings. And I want to hear from you Vikings fans. Your team has gone away with a lot the last couple of weeks. You've gotten some really close games, but the Packers, if there's going to be one team that's going to knock the Vikings off, it's going to be the Packers. And hopefully we see that happen later in the week. But great game for the Packers. Definitely some things to work on for sure. Jordan Love still needs to, be more consistent at times. Or again, letting the foot off the gas really gets really frustrating at times. But the Packers win. That's all that matters. They're in the playoffs. The Saints, again, are looking at next year, hoping to see if some things will change. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Have a great day, and as always, God bless and go Pack Go.